So this is a video. Asmongold is right about people, and I look like some kind of fucking like old philosopher that lives in like a hut in the woods or something like that. The truth is that I don't think that society at large sees a large difference. The reason why I don't think that people see a large difference in the world are often the reason why I don't think that people see a large difference is that I've never seen a large scale consumer shift to where consumers are purchasing something that is more inconvenient or more expensive because of the way that it's produced. Now, some people do this. I'm not arguing that nobody does this. But the biggest companies in the world are oftentimes the most immoral ones. And I think that there's a reason for that. It's because people don't really care where their products come from. Like, nobody really cares about Amazon workers pissing in bottles. You care about it, but would you want to pay twice as much for Amazon Prime to fix it? No, probably not. And the same thing's true with phone batteries. The same thing is true with electronic car batteries. The same thing is true with clothes. And everybody just forgoes morality to participate in these things.
Now that was, in case you didn't recognize the voice, Asmongold addressing a certain issue. For the full context, and I don't normally cover e-drama, but I think this topic goes well beyond e-drama, Asmongold made some statements to the effect of, as you just heard, that consumers just don't care where their art comes from, and expanded a little bit beyond that to the extent that
consumers don't care what anything comes from.
He talked about Amazon workers pissing in bottles and whether or not people would want to pay twice as much for the same service. And the reason I'm covering this is because it touches upon some deeply evolved evolutionary principles, which I'll get into later. But let me say at the outset that I have a great deal of admiration for Asmongold.
Oh, thank you.
He was born with a fantastic personality in as much as he's incredibly resilient and intelligent, though it's his resilience that I admire the most. He shrugs everything off as if it were nothing.
There are a lot of things that bother me. There are things that bother me, but it's just that I don't let them bothering me make me stop doing it. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't like it, but that's just the way it goes.
His mother died, and despite being close to her, he got back to work relatively quickly afterwards and never batted an eyelash. He just takes blows and nothing really affects him, and that's not a quality I have, so I admire him for that. But I think
I've bitched out on a lot of things over the years, but I've tried to do a good job at kind of being more resilient, like, for sure. And I do try as much as I can be, right? I mean, I'm not perfect, but I do try.
Times people can perceive that as a certain harshness and indifference and or a brashness that a lot of people don't like. But the reality here, in his statement, and more broadly, is that he is telling it like it is. Human beings operate a certain way, and oftentimes we as human beings would prefer that we be different, that we behave differently, that the world might be different. Very few of us want to die, for example, but eventually we all have to go. There are innumerable examples of things that we wish were different, but unfortunately are not.
Yeah.
And Asmongold, hardened as he is, simply states the truth. But what I really want to focus on is the human psychology here and what's at play. Namely, people's indifference to the source of their products. And you could go as far as pretty much anything. But an example I like to bring up, and something I talked about 10 years ago, in fact, was the example of conflict minerals. Now, conflict minerals, in case you're not aware,
blood diamonds,
are these minerals largely in Africa, but not exclusively. We can talk about it in a bit. And sometimes they're referred to as the 3 T's. Tin, tungsten, tantalum, and gold, which doesn't start with a T, but nonetheless is part of that. And all these minerals are used for very important products and objects in the world that we inhabit, namely things related to electronics, phone batteries, which he brought up, various forms of circuitry, motherboards, computer components, and so on and so forth. And so, inevitably, your computer, your phone, your device will require the addition of some of these minerals in order to make it work and be the thing that you've grown accustomed to and appreciate. The problem is that it's almost impossible to know as a consumer where these minerals are being sourced from. Whence the name conflict minerals, the term deriving from the...
Well, I don't think consumers really care. Like, I think everybody, if you told everybody that, like, yeah, the reason why you have your motherboard is because, you know, of some fucking African warlord or something like that. Like, I think that if people had to choose between eliminating Joseph Kony's child army and having the new iPhone, I think they'd choose the new iPhone.
The fact that the profits made from these minerals in many countries, say in Africa and Congo, are used for nefarious purposes such as the prosecution of war, the exploitation of minors, and the wee ones in the form of labor that used to exist way back in the day where you have no choice or forced to participate.
The kids yearn for the mines.
Drift, theft, the slaying of human beings, and general destruction. And it's not always the case. There are other places that have these minerals. In the Iberian Peninsula, for example, i.e. within Portugal and Spain, you will find copious amounts of tungsten, useful. In Australia, in the west of Australia specifically, you have a lot of gold. And so many of these minerals can be sourced from places that would not be subject to the conflict mineral definition, but you don't know that, and you cannot know that. Meaning there's some unknown percentage, a non-zero chance, that the minerals that have gone into your device, your phone, your computer, your battery, whatever it might be, have been taken and sourced from a place like Congo, a place where there is a lot of
Donkey
conflict,
Congo.
where
Yeah.
actually, in order to procure some of these minerals, youths and wee ones are exploited in the worst way possible.
Yeah.
If you can imagine what I'm talking about, so that we in the West might enjoy our fancy products. And I made the point almost 10 years ago that people are essentially piteously indifferent to this situation. And to get back not just to Asmon's point here, but a broader
Well, if the ones that were conflict-free were cheaper or the same price, then people would buy the conflict-free ones. But if they were sold out that day, they'd probably just sacrifice another kid. Because they don't want to drive back up the next day. They got to work, and then there's like some other thing they have planned after work, so they're not going to have time. And so you're just going to have to sacrifice another kid to Joseph Kony's child army. It's just the way it is.
point he's made throughout the years is that people
Army's
don't
getting
really
pretty
care
big
about something unless it affects them. And so you bring up the example of Amazon employees pissing in bottles a couple of years ago, or the harshness of, say, clothing manufacturing overseas.
It's a good point. Somebody in chat says the kid's already dead. It would be disrespectful not to buy it. True. Yeah, you want to have his death go for... So sick. I love it.
And the reality is, as he says,
not in vain.
fully in agreement, and it's factual.
I'll buy your
maps onto
phone.
Human reality and maps onto human behavior, that the vast majority of us aren't really bothered by that.
Yeah.
Would you rather pay $10 for a shirt or $20 for a shirt? Would you rather pay $50 for a product at Amazon or $100? And here's the real kicker, the real question. Would you rather have a smartphone or a PC, or, based on the non-zero chance / probability that some people, including adults, youths, and wee ones, were exploited in ways you can scarcely imagine, and that these products that you're using have the trickle-down effect that it fuels conflict in places like Africa, leading to untold misery, death, and destruction? Would you rather not have your fancy phone and your computer, or alternatively, pay an incredibly high premium, say, on ethically sourced minerals? That sort of thing does exist. It's a bit complicated. Or would you, in the West, be it in Europe, be it in North America, Rather, accept the consequences of the products that you're enjoying and appreciate. Namely, that you are potentially...
Well, there aren't any consequences. It's just that you have a phone. You're not the one in Joseph Kony's child army. You got nothing to do with that. You've never even been to Africa. There's no consequences for you. It's just a cheap phone.
Causing, indirectly, contributing, at the very least, to some of the worst forms of human exploitation that exist, and to the general destruction of the people in that area. Oh. How many people do you think would actually forego their PCs, their mobile phones, in order to prevent that non-zero chance that such a thing occurred? I think the number of people, there will be some, is vanishingly small. Because ultimately this all goes back to this notion that...
I think that if you gave every person... I don't know about every culture, right? But here in our culture here, if you gave them a button, and if you push the button, you'd get $1 million, and it would kill another person that you have no idea who they are. I think 95% of people would hit the button. And in fact, I think that if you reduce the amount to $10,000, I think the same amount would hit the button. I'd be spamming it. I'd do it for $1.
That people don't care about where their art comes from with respect to AI. And there's a small contingent of artists online, this is mostly virtue signaling, as it always is, who are calling people who don't care about this unethical. Well, my question to them would be, how many of them would forego the use of their phones and computers and technology in order to prevent the worst forms of human exploitation you can imagine in a place such as Congo? No, I'm not talking about pissing in bottles. Use your imagination. There are far worse things.
Oh, yeah.
Because the only way you can guarantee that that's not happening is by not using these products. Will they? Or is this just particular to their own, nothing wrong with that, self-interest? If you're an artist, a human artist that is, you have a self-interest.
Almost every single person's morality is completely self-referential. Almost nobody has a moral system that goes against what's personally beneficial. And to the extent that they do, they depersonalize their moral system from their behavior. So, like, they think that this is bad. It's like most people that are smokers know smoking is bad. It's basically like that. Not true? I think it is true. I do. I think that most people have a moral and ethical system that is completely self-referential, that is beneficial for their current state of being or their ideal state of being, and it actually doesn't have anything to do with any sort of like North Star principle. And to the extent that it does, that North Star principle is beneficial for that individual. People care about the greater good if they're part of the greater good. If they're not, then it's tyranny by the majority. That's why, for example, young people are liberal and old people are conservative. Young people want more taxes generally, older people want less. Well, why is that? It's because young people has less money, older people have more. It's obvious.
Interest to be, in theory, because there are other ways artists can make use of and exploit AI, separate discussion. You have the self-interest.
This is now you're generalizing everyone to your nihilistic Western philosophies? Okay. Where do you think that's not the case? Yeah, I'm actually curious. Where do you think that's not the case? I agree with him. No, I think there's a lot of people that agree with that. That's why I pulled up his message. It's because I saw a number of other people in chat that said about the same thing. And so I was curious what his opinion was. He's right. It's true. It's all because it's through your lens. Well, of course it's through my lens. That's how else could I see the world? Nobody can see the world through somebody else's eyes authentically. Everybody else is going to be looking at it from their perspective. You can't really see it from another person's perspective, right? I don't know if this person really has a response. It isn't nihilistic, it's realistic. Yeah, I don't think that it's nihilistic either. I just think this is the way that people are. And it's not necessarily like really a bad thing in a lot of ways. And I think that everybody partakes in this. And I guess this person, it seems like they're not really responding at all. So like, it's whatever. But anyway, I think that this point of view is something that's shared by people all over the world. And everybody all over the world has like a different rationalization for it. But the end goal is the same thing. Like almost every single landmass that exists, and like the country there exists because some guy in the past killed a bunch of people and took it over. Like that's the everything. History is written in blood. Like even if you think that's not the case now, it always has been, and you don't see people looking to give that land back at all. People care about how much about the Native Americans, but nobody's giving their land back to them. People can talk about how much they care about it. Oh yeah, this is horrible what we did. Nobody's giving their house back to them. It's because people love to posture, but they don't like to stand on business. They're not actually going to do anything. They just want to change their profile picture to a flag. People love to feel good for doing nothing.
Against AI and to prevent its spread. The knock-on effects of chastising other people for making use of this are, frankly speaking, silly. We all make use of products that we would otherwise not want to forego using for the simple reason that we want to have them. Yes, I will state, I am perfectly okay with a non-zero chance that people I don't know on a different continent are being exploited and suffering in some of the worst ways humanly possible, as long as I get to keep my PC. That might make me seem monstrous. I want a PC
too, yeah.
But at least I'm being honest. The vast majority of people out there are the same. They don't care. Now the real question is why they don't care. Well, it seems obvious, but every explanation you would give in this context would be a proximal explanation. Meaning, it makes sense. Asmongold has cited the example of some 38-year-old with a stressful job and a million different problems. He's not going to be worried about games being overpriced or AI art or this sort of thing. Yes, that's a proximal explanation. But in order to understand the deeper roots of this, our pitiless indifference to the plight of others far away, or even those not so far away, we need to understand what we ultimately are. We are animals that seek to propagate our DNA. And from this, all things follow. We have a primary interest in our kin and our sense of obligation to them. Usually.
Yeah, no, he's right about this. And this is just generally the way that people make decisions. Is that, like people are going to make decisions that are preferential towards themselves. People are willing to make decisions that are preferential towards their family, preferential towards their community, and preferential towards their country. Usually in that order. And it's like a tier list. This person disagrees. People aren't willing to sacrifice their entire well-being, but soldiers die for their country. To people voting for a policy to tax themselves more. People are ultimately good, even when selfish people can do good things. I think that people aren't good or bad. I think that people are a mix of the two. Like, there are tremendously great things that people have done. Like, for example, like the Western world has pretty much gotten rid of slavery. That's pretty crazy. Whenever you think about it, that's fucking nuts. Like, we've been doing this whole slavery thing for like thousands of years, and it finally fell off. That's nuts. It's debatable. No, it's not debatable. It's a fact that we don't have slavery anymore. Jail is slavery? No, it's not. Jail isn't slavery. Who told you that? Jail is not slavery? No, it's not. Like, yeah, who could possibly tell you that jail is slavery? Like, that's the dumbest thing that you could say. Jail is not like slavery at all. That's insane. It is? So what they used to do to black people is they would pull out their teeth and give them to white people. They don't do that to people in jail. I don't think that you understand how bad slavery was. Like, if you think that jail is like slavery, you're not educated about slavery. I mean, that's really just the truth. People are so ignorant. Yeah. And I think that really, like, so there's this residual opinion that a lot of people have that, like, oh, our country is actually bad and it still, like, has these problems. And it's not that you're totally wrong, but whenever you're equating these problems to the way that they used to be, you are just being so massively disingenuous, and you're completely, in my opinion, lying. And you're doing a disservice to how bad those things were whenever you're comparing them to jail. Like, you don't get born into jail. Your family doesn't get sent to different jails to break your spirit. You go to jail for committing a crime, and you have rights as a person in jail. Slaves didn't have rights. Like, the idea that jail is like slavery is fucking insane. You don't even know the first thing about slavery if you think jail is anything like slavery. We don't have slavery anymore. It's a fucking miracle. It's something that should be celebrated.
Those who are genetically related to us. This is not universal because
yeah, some people still have it.
Relations, and sometimes blood turns out to be not very thick indeed. There are examples of this. We're talking about exceptions, though. Generally speaking, people are interested in those related to them and their immediate friend circles. Now, friends might not be directly related.
Somebody goes, dude, shut the fuck up. Your country is builded in slaves' blood. Hat, the actual fuck you talking about? Well, yeah, I know. The whole country was built not primarily by slaves, but partially by slaves. Yeah, that's how we know. Like, I know about slavery because our country utilized slavery massively. Like every country. Yeah, no, the U.S. isn't special here, but, like, yeah, we also did it. Of course. It worked really well then. That's why they do it.
Related to you, but they can aid you in survival, in theory. Mm-hmm. They can aid you in moving along in life and propagating your DNA. Now, the most recent explanation for this, offered by the British anthropologist Robin Dunbar, is something called Dunbar's number. I talked about Dunbar's number, unsurprisingly, almost 10 years ago, and I've talked about it on occasion on this channel, but that is a limiting factor in terms of the number of people you can know, i.e. be familiar with, and actually care about. And he, through a combination of observation of other primates, human beings, and neuroimaging... Yeah, it's like 100 to 250 people. There's like a variation of it, of like, you can only give a fuck about this many people, and after that, everybody else is like an NPC. That's effectively what he's saying. That's a super, like, what do you call it? Like, generalization of it, simplification. But that's basically what he's saying. We got our slaves from other slavers. They enslaved their own race. What are you talking about black people for, and like the way it was from Africa? Like, slavery is obviously bad. Like, why are we, like, what do you, like, I don't take any accountability for what somebody that I was related to did 200 years ago. I don't care. Like, I didn't do this. I don't think that I'm accountable for this. It's not my fault. Like, I don't give a shit. I'm not trying to do some sort of, like, fucking original sin white guilt shit here, okay? It's very obvious that we benefited from slavery. As well, every other country. How the fuck do you think the people that built the pyramids were getting, all of them were getting paid? I don't think so. Like, this is just the way it is.
You don't need to go and like preemptively defend yourself as a white person as, oh, it wasn't just my fault. They sold them to us. Who cares? There's no us. You weren't even alive. You didn't exist. Fuck.
Came to the conclusion that it's about 150 individuals that we can know and care about to some degree. But even within that 150, there are different layers. So he might say something like, the tightest circle of people being your kin, your genetic relatives, your brother, your sister,
Oh, this is
your mother,
exactly
your
what I
father,
just got done
maybe
saying.
your cousin.
Yeah.
In some cases, friends. And then the layers that follow it, say,
It's like
your good
family,
friends,
community,
very close friends,
city,
maybe.
country.
Then you have more superficial friendships. Then you have maybe a bunch of so-called meaningful contacts. Then you have acquaintances. And then you have another bunch of people that you kind of vaguely recognize. Now, somewhere within these different layers is a limit, and to be more specific, the hard limit of how many individuals within that circle of vague to extreme familiarity you can actually care about, meaning you care about their well-being, their welfare, their state of mind, etc., etc. So a theoretical example, to use this sort of by five principle, is there are five people, say your kin, your brother, your sister, your grandmother, your mother, your father, that you're quote-unquote closest to and that mean the most to you. Then there might be something like 10 to 15 really good friends, 50 to 100 more superficial friends. And then you start getting into this meaningful contact area where you don't really care about them, but they're useful to you. Yeah. And that's how it kind of works. Now, some people contest 100%. This number, 150. Some people claim it's as high as 300. But there's no contention in the sense that we are limited by our cognitive capacity in how many people we can know, be familiar with, and most importantly, care about. So the vast majority of us would accept the worst forms of human exploitation out there if that exploitation was only being applied to strangers we don't know on a different continent in order to enjoy our electronic products, our games, our PCs, and so on and so forth. But if it were our sister or brother, we'd be very disturbed. So here's a hypothetical. Let's say every time you buy a PC component or you want to build a PC or you buy a phone, there is a 25% chance that some of the parts that went into this product were sourced from conflict minerals and that the proceeds went to some local warlord that did the worst things possible to human beings. What if there were a 25% chance that your sibling, your brother or sister, could suffer a similar fate? Again, imagine the worst forms of exploitation.
If you buy a motherboard, your little brother gets conscripted into Joseph Kony's child army. I mean, for some people, that's probably killing two birds with one stone. But yeah, in general, I think less people would do it.
And suffering.
Good, fuck them. Yeah,
in the context of your family. If you bought PC components.
I'll take two.
Or a smartphone. Every time you did that, there was a 25% chance. Most people would think twice about that.
Oh, yeah.
Most people would be very concerned that that risk, even though it's not that high, it's only 25% at the end of the day. 75% chance nothing happens. Most people, I think, I maintain, would be concerned if it were about their sister or brother. And perhaps in similar fashion, maybe slightly less, if it were a close friend, one of that inner circle of friends. The further you
It's crazy how much like the moral posturing on the internet is. And I think it's also like in real life too, but it's especially bad on the internet, is that we have to have a conversation that where people have to like begrudgingly acknowledge that they care more about their family members than some random person in Africa. Because people are just like so morally afraid to say what's fucking obvious. I think it's a big problem because people just live in like so many different levels of like people have intellectualized reality to so many degrees that they're not even part of it anymore. Like you're not even living in the real world. You're living in like 7 different levels of abstraction and like these false pretenses that are built off of other false pretenses.
Away from this, the less concerned you are. Now here's another hypothetical. Let's say there's an Amazon warehouse in Texas, but you live in Wisconsin or New York or Maine, And there's a similar practice there. There's a 25% chance that in various warehouses in Texas, Amazon employees were being similarly exploited and suffering in ways similar to those human beings.
Yeah, but how fast does this stuff get delivered, though?
How many people do you think in these other states far away would be so concerned about their welfare that they would either be willing to forego the product entirely or pay something like triple or quadruple the price on said product?
No, there's no
I think
way.
most people still would want the product, even if there were a chance that their so-called fellow Americans were being exploited in ways.
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple, right? I mean, like, don't we have, we have, like, the produce. I mean, like, a lot of produce is, like, sourced from people that aren't really being paid very well or treated very well. But you can also go to a farmer's market and get produce there, but it's more expensive.
That only exist in third world countries
There
such
it
as
is.
Congo in the context of conflict minerals. Now, in the context of the United States,
Yeah.
there would be legal action, obviously, because that would be a violation of the law. But would people really be bothered by it? Probably not. Unless they were related to them, they were friends, maybe neighbors. Again, we're talking about the capacity to know, be familiar, and actually
Amazon
care
is a
about
$1 trillion
people,
company,
which is
by
a
the way.
function of our brain size, and the limitations of our brain.
It's worth
There's
like
only so much space in our
$1.52 trillion.
brains to be familiar with such people. Had we evolved in a different situation, in a different environment, where we had different brains and we had tens of thousands of individuals that were connected to, society would look very, very
0.79.
different today.
Oh, wow.
As I say constantly, and I've said for over a decade, we are the byproducts of a very long evolutionary process. We are animals. We have not changed that much. We've changed somewhat, but not that much. And the core principles that informed our behavior, say 50, 100,000 years ago, are still very much present right now, and they are constantly being reiterated, albeit in a different context. There's often, as I've stated many times as well, veiled by the comfort of modernity.
Well, I don't think this is an evolution. I mean, it is in a way, but it's not. It's never going to go away because, like, scarcity is never going to go away either. Like, I think that the core of all evil is scarcity. The reason why people are angry or unhappy or discontent is generally scarcity in one form or another. And because I don't think this is ever going to go away until people get to like some sort of like fucking, VR Neuralink induced nirvana where they just live in a completely different universe and they don't even exist in the real world anymore, which is like so abstract you can't even really think about it. The truth is that like, that's why people are mad, because like evolution would naturally benefit people that prioritize like the acquisition of resources. So like the people who didn't like the idea of killing the rival caveman village and taking all of their stuff, well, those people just kind of got removed from the gene pool over like millions of years. And so now people are always willing to go over to the other caveman village and kill everybody. They're always going to do that. And even whenever they don't do it themselves, they might, make a hammer for the other guy to go over there and do it, and then be like, oh, well, it wasn't me. Oops. I guess, it is what it is. And so, yeah, people are programmed to do that. And they always will, because people want to have more stuff. Everybody always wants more stuff. There's never an amount of stuff that a person will get that will make them happy. I think that being happy and having stuff is on two different spectrums. Now, there are necessities, but very rarely is it, well, if I get 3 luxury cars, I will be happy. A person who needs 3 luxury cars to be happy will eventually need 4 luxury cars to be happy. And a person who's making $100 million or making $100,000, or actually that's still pretty kind of low comparatively on the threshold. If you're making $500,000, you going up to $600,000 will not make you any happier. It probably won't. And that's the difference, right? Is that people just get to the point to where like, yeah, like meeting needs is one thing, right? And that will make you happy. But other than that, people will always want more stuff. They always will. That's just how it is.
Veiled by the illusions that we weave within the context of our so-called society. Everyone would like to think of themselves as a virtuous good person, But the vast, vast, vast majority of us are not. I'm not a particularly ethical person. Like I said, I don't care enough about strangers in Africa such that I'm willing to forego my PC or similar products. And I'm going to assume, you might be offended, that you're quite similar as well. I think most of us are like that. And the same holds true for AI art. It is a small contingent of people who are claiming the moral high ground, but ultimately, consumers don't care, and it all goes back to our evolutionary origins. We are not wired to care about people in distant lands, people we don't know, or their welfare. The illusion that we do is a byproduct that has been manufactured online in places like X, formerly known as Twitter, of people who want a virtue signal. But the reality is that I'm willing to bet money that almost none of those artists complaining about people's use of AI or companies' use of AI for art would be willing to forego their PCs, their electronics, in order to save a couple of children in Africa. They would not. They're willing to buy the products despite the almost certainty that some of those components were sourced vis-a-vis conflict minerals, i.e. some of the worst forms
Well,
of...
people don't give a shit about it because it's beneficial for them. Like, I mean, really, like, what is this? Like, I mean, why are we really even thinking about this? Yeah. I mean, that's just the way it is. People don't see this kind of... people don't see that same perspective. And also, like, and this is what I was saying about, like, people's philosophies being self-referential. Like, from their perspective, everything that they care about is a just cause. And whenever you point out the examples that they're not, you know, being consistent with, this is whataboutism or a but you live in society, how curious argument. So it's like that they've already created like a universe where this is just completely okay no matter what. And it's like, it's not built out of an ethical system or a moral system or like anything that's external. And if it does align with something that's external, that is an incident. It's incidental. It's not intentional.
Human exploitation out there, and imagine words that I am frankly not allowed to say on YouTube. Imagine that happens in these areas, and they would be willing to countenance that. I am 99% sure of it. Those artists who are claiming that the rest of us are immoral for using AI art, etc., do all kinds of things that are immoral. Are all of them like that? No. There might be people out there, I'm very skeptical that there are, who are willing to forego every product that seems even vaguely unethical. Somebody finds out today that their PC has been sourced using conflict minerals, and they just forsake using a PC for the rest of their lives, right? Those people exist. The numbers, though, of such people are vanishingly small. 99% plus of people are not like that. Asmongold is right about people, and this is simply a matter of people not liking reality. Reality can at times be deeply, deeply unpleasant.
I think the reason why is that people, it's not that people don't like reality. People like to have a moral high ground. People love moral high grounds. And it makes them feel good. Like, there's nothing that people love more than being able to act like an animal to a person and then think that they're right about it. That's why, for example, there's so many shows about, like, guys that are vigilantes. Because it's all about doing the wrong thing to the right person. And that's a huge outlet for it. That's why people like the Colosseum. Like, for example, if they brought back the Roman Colosseum, like where, you know, you would have like people go and kill each other for like sport, it would have more people watching it than the Super Bowl regularly. Everybody would tune in to watch this. Well, UFC, yeah, nobody dies in the UFC though, and like nobody's using any weapons. It's not as exciting as it would be if there was, like, imagine like there's like two guys in there, they've got a suit of armor, and one of them's gonna kill each other, and there's also, they just let a tiger out in the middle of the match. Oh, what's gonna happen? You know, I'd watch that. Yeah, everybody would watch this.
This is one of the many unpleasantries in the world. If I'm suffering as an individual and there's some problem I have, I cannot reasonably expect strangers to care about me. I can't even reasonably expect my friends to care about me. And that's just how it is. So Dunbar's number, that upper limit, cognitive limit, to be very specific, of how many people we can know and care about, and the general self-serving nature of human beings being DNA replicators like any other animal on Earth. We care about what we care about. And that's just the way it is. As always, thank you for tuning in. Many special thanks to my patrons and people on PayPal who donate. You guys are the best. Keep the channel alive.
Waifu connoisseur.
All would be dust and ash. As for everybody else, if you can leave a comment, share, subscribe. If you've not yet subscribed, it'd be much appreciated. Apparently it helps out with the channel. Yet to be proven. If I'm still alive, I'll check you out next time. Until then, may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye for now. Or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was pretty fair. Like, for me, I think there's a lot of examples like this that aren't necessarily just about PCs. I think you can use that with clothes or anything else. I'll link you guys a video. This is pretty fair. Obviously, a lot of people are, you know, like, everybody on the internet loves to, they love to patronize everybody else, right? Tell everybody, oh, this is how you need to live, this is what you need to do, etc. It's extremely, extremely, extremely common. And I don't really think it's going to go away. I think that we've always done this in some way where it's like, you know, we used to burn witches. You know, they set like Joan of Arc on fire back in the day, like the church did that. And that was a good time for everybody. And, you know, now we'll like all get together and like people will try to like find some crazy Karen who's having some mental breakdown at Starbucks. They'll like find out where she works and then like harass her sister, and like this is somehow to help service workers. And or like you know, Starbucks said something that was pro-Israel, so people get Starbucks and then they don't pay for the meal, and this is like, you know, this is helping Palestine. And really, like, this is the extent of somebody's activism. Most people are not really willing to do anything that's not beneficial. They're not willing to do anything that's not conspicuous or anything like that. They all got Starbucks anyway? Yeah, exactly. There's the video. Give it a like. I think this is pretty fair. Yeah, I like talking about this kind of stuff. Most people aren't good people. Most people are 2 deviation points away from being evil. Most people are completely self-serving at all things. Well, I don't think that's necessarily being evil isn't being self-serving. I mean, like, I don't know. I think being evil is being malicious beyond being self-serving. Most people are self-serving. I wouldn't say that's evil, though, personally. Yeah. But self-projecting? No, I think he just has a different definition for it. And, yeah, as I said, people have a self-referential worldview, and that's all they really care about. Palm oil, deforestation, ethically sourced coffee and chocolate. All the virtues are commercialized by corporations now. Yeah, of course. I think people are evil. I just think humans are selfish, so it makes it feel better about ourselves. I don't think that people are really evil. I think that most people are generally... Most people are willing to get along and be cooperative to the extent that it is not detrimental. And also, like, more so to the extent that it is not tremendously detrimental. Doubt? No, I don't think that's a doubt at all. Think about it like this. Back in the caveman days, the guy that couldn't get along, and I don't want to work with anybody, and he's living out by himself, well, he doesn't really procreate at all. He just gets phased out of the gene pool. In the same way that the people that are like super self-conscious do. That's the truth. Like, these people are phased out. Like, apes together strong. Yeah, there's a reason for that. And where did we come from? We came from apes. Are people generalizing and some people are evil? Sure. Yeah, well, I think that most people are not evil. I think that people are... I think people can do evil. Anybody can do evil, for sure. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. But, and think that they're doing a good thing. That's very common. But I don't think that most people are, like, you know, it's not like they don't know that they're evil and they do it anyway. It's not like I love killing baby cats and this is just what makes me happy, right? They like, people that kill the baby cats think that the cats are like demons Or they're like, oh, it's a black cat. It's like it's from Satan and it's trying to like, you know, ruin the world. So like in their mind, they're the good guy. That doesn't mean that they're the good guy, but in their mind they are. A good example of this is a lot of Aztec sacrifices. Remember they pulled somebody's heart, rolled their corpse down the fucking stairs? This is like, if you look at their philosophy, this was not just a brutal murder. This was an act of like kind of like reconciliation with a soul. It's like bringing their life into another version of existence. It doesn't make it good, but it makes it understandable, and you can see where they're like, they don't view themselves as being murderers. They think that they are helping this person into the next part of their life through this ritual. It's not full evil. Yeah. So much good culture loss. Sad. Yeah. We don't do that much anymore, right? It's the same with ISIS. Well, yeah. Like, for example, like the suicide bombers, right? Some guy flies an airplane into a building. Well, in his mind, he's going to go to heaven for this because he's fighting a holy war. Like, a lot of the Crusaders went to the Crusades because they wanted to fulfill some sort of penance. I mean, a lot of them actually, I think, got conscripted. But, you know, some of them went there because they wanted to fulfill a penance, or they, you know, felt like they had a duty to God or something like that. So, yes, they might be pillaging villages and murdering people, but in their mind, they're doing the right thing. And that's what I'm saying about it being a self-referential morality. Most people are not doing something evil knowing that they are evil. They in their own mind, they are the hero of the story. I think, you know, like, that's why a villain, like, for example, Thanos is so good. Follow it to the letter this day. Following any book that was written over 1,000 years ago to the letter is a bad idea. Like, of course that's bad. There might be good philosophy in it that you can learn from and implement into your life that could be good, but not everything. No patch notes for religious books? Well, there were patch notes. It's called the New Testament. And then they had the remaster with the Nicene Council, and the King James Bible, another remaster, a reforge. And the DLC? Yeah, DLC. Well, the DLC came out with Jonathan, was it Jonathan Smith, the Mormons? Yeah, you even had that. That was like Dark Souls 2. That's not how it was made. Kind of close. It's a crazy patch, bro. Like, it's a spinoff. Yeah, they really went off on that one, huh? Vanilla was the Ethiopian Bible? Yeah, I heard about that. They have like more stuff in there, like different things that are not included in like the like Western Catholic Bible. But yeah, no, I mean, that's my perspective on this kind of stuff, right? No, I think that everybody just kind of has opinions that are beneficial to themselves. That's really what it is. Please don't compare preserved text that speaks truth to voted by some people. There's no text that speaks any sort of external truth. It's all words written down by people that probably thought the earth was flat. If you want to use it as like philosophy, go ahead. But there's no evidence of that, and you're not going to get me to acknowledge that your book that was written by somebody who probably didn't even understand math, I'm not going to take this very seriously. I'm sorry, man. I'm not going to, I'm not trying to shit on your religion, but I don't want to hear about how it's infallible either. Keep it to yourself. You need to understand math to understand human souls. No, not necessarily, but I think you've got a pretty good idea of not understanding shit if you don't understand math or anything else. I think these are people who thought that miracles were, the science were miracles. If somebody from nowadays went back to the biblical times and they were able to do what they can do now with different types of minerals and things like that, they would either be considered a messiah or a wizard or a witch or something and be killed. Like, that's just really what would happen. And if you imagine the venue would say, yeah, it'd be one or the other, right? As I'm Catholic, but I myself acknowledge that the writings of the Bible started happening stories that are verbal for like 200 years. I don't want to talk about whether you think that your magic book is valid or not. Like, I don't want to argue about this. Like, I don't. This is. Listen, guys, you can't reason a person out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. Most people do not logically deduce that one of these books is accurate. They are brought up in the culture. They have some sort of, like, inner faith connection to it, or there's some sort of reason why they believe in it that transcends logic. And so I can't explain you out of your position. And you're not going to be able to explain me into it either. You're wasting your time. But anyway, it is almost 6 in the morning. I'm going to sleep. I have a appointment tomorrow, and I'm going to go do that. And then after I finish that, I'll probably come back, chill for a little bit, and then get back on, and then just keep going. Somebody says, you know nothing to speak about it? No, I think I know enough. I mean, again, like, again, it's kind of disrespectful to call people's religious books a magic book while at the same time saying you don't want to talk about it. Well, yeah, but it's also disrespectful for them to come in and tell me that, like, all of this stuff is true, isn't it? And for me to, like, just disregard every bit of, like, learned knowledge and science that I've accrued over my life, and to just forego all of that and then just believe what they think. It's disrespectful. It's annoying, right? I'm not going into, like, I don't go out of my way to talk about this a lot. I don't shit on religion a whole lot. I don't want to hear about it. But yeah, if people do push me on it, then yeah, I think it's fucking ridiculous. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and, what do you call it? Sleep, and that's about it. Alright, boys, peace. See ya!